Okay, hello everyone. Good evening. Good evening. So tonight we've got a really special interview with a special guest, the amazing Pip Stewart, who we're going to be talking to live. Just got to wait for her to join us, and she'll be with us in a minute. Just got to wait for her to log on. Slow down, do less is watching. So there you go. Hi Pip. Can you hear me? I somehow need to split the screen. Hang on, here you go. Right, so I've done this without Holly. So it's a small miracle if I get this to work. Hang on 2 seconds. Ah, there you go. Hi, Pip.
Hallelujah.
What a miracle.
The wonders of modern technology.
Oh, I mean, honestly, Holly gave me about an hour, because Holly's not here this evening, so she gave me like an hour tutorial on how to do this.
Usually... I've never done it before either, Sam, so we're both new.
Okay, good. How's Willow? Is she asleep?
She is. Do you know what? We're sleep training at the moment, so it's just, it's a long process. So I'm trying to do it really gradually, but she's asleep and Charlie's in charge, so happy days. Good.
How was your motorhome trip? It looked pretty amazing.
Oh my God, yeah. So we went up to Northumberland, and have you been to that part of the world?
Once.
Oh, yeah, magic.
Beautiful.
And like Bamburgh Castle and the beach, I was blown away. I was like, I've always just kind of gone on to Scotland, and I'm like, why? Like, I need to stop here more.
Well, I was reading it's the least populated county in Britain.
Is it?
In Northumberland.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, so lots of space up there. Good. Well, thank you for joining us tonight. So we wanted to speak to you for a while, really. There's obviously huge amounts to talk about in terms of what you've done. And so just before we get into just to contextualize, I guess, what we're doing tonight. So we want to talk about kind of all things nature, really, for everyone watching. Because for me, nature connection, the whole arena of nature connection is I think it's a missing piece of the puzzle. I think, in 12, 15 years of clinical practice and cancer research and all the rest of it, there's always been, I suppose, a bit of a missing piece of the puzzle when it comes to health promotion and particularly disease prevention. And over the last 5 or 6 years, it's what the evidence is showing is that missing piece of the puzzle, particularly in the urbanized, developed world, is increasingly looking to be like the disconnect that we're experiencing from the natural world. And what that's doing to us, this idea that we've got something called this Paleolithic genome, these genes that exist from 150,000 years ago, when we were completely at one with nature. And by taking ourselves out of nature, that genome isn't being activated, and with that comes weakened immunity and worsened digestion. And the evidence is robust now. And I guess the beauty of that is the way out of that is very simple. It's going for a walk, it's lighting a fire pit, it's staring out to sea, it's free, it's simple. And that's, a really, really kind of big part, I suppose, of the work we're doing now. And actually, before I get into that, on that note, this coming Sunday, everyone, we've got a completely free challenge. It's called the 5-Day Nature Connection Challenge, which is about this evidence-based framework for how we can really embed the natural world into our lives in a health context. So if you want to sign up for that, it's completely free. Kicks off this Sunday evening, long before the football, so there's no conflict of interest there. So anyway, let's dive in. So Pip, I know we fortuitously met a couple of years ago in the shop, and have kind of crossed paths quite a lot since. So doing some digging and research around you in a non-stalkerish way makes very.
I thought I saw someone in the bushes.
Yeah, I've got a new pair of binoculars. Makes very interesting reading. I know we spoke about some of your expeditions, but I've actually kind of got the nitty gritty now, and it's pretty compelling reading. And I actually watched some of the content on the blog from the is it Essequibo?
Yeah, the Essequibo.
Yeah. So just as a summary, so Pip has cycled almost on your way back home, from what I can gather, over 10,000 miles from Malaysia to the UK, 3,000-mile trip by boat, by bike, by aeroplane, raising environmental awareness for South America. And then recently this Essequibo, which it looked pretty, from what I've read on the blog and everything, it looked pretty hard. I mean, it looked absolutely brutal.
Hardly ever done, Sam.
I mean the accounts, and it just looks, some of it's almost harrowing in terms of what, how difficult that trip was, and that was the world's first, wasn't it? That was
yeah, it was. And I think part of the appeal of that journey was, like, to your point about nature connection, it was wilderness. You know, we were in the jungle for 3 months and kind of living and surviving, and we were guided by the YY indigenous community.
Yeah.
And, you know, to your point about being disconnected about nature, you know, being with people who are kind of walking past every tree and every plant and saying, oh, you've cut yourself, like, use the bark from this, and and this plant helps with that. And I'm still in touch with the YY, actually.
Are you?
And one of the guys, James, messaged me the other day and said, oh, you know, we're using a bark to help cure COVID in the village because there was an outbreak there.
Wow.
And you just think, gosh, we've got such a tiny part that we've tapped into about the potential for plant medicines. And I mean, you know more than me on this. But
this is what's so frustrating, is you go back just 200 years, just 200 years, even 150 years at a push in Britain right now, in the south coast of England. Virtually every household or community or village or family would have had, these healers or these, almost witches who could go out into the hedgerows and the woods and do the same thing here. They could go out and pick elderflowers because the child's got a cold, or they could pick hawthorn berry because someone's got high blood pressure, or whatever it is. That knowledge was part of our culture, very, very recently. It's just so frustrating that it's been absolutely decimated by, not anti-development, obviously, but I think we can develop both concurrently. And at the moment, it's all one and not the other. And I think that's a big loss.
Absolutely.
Frustrating. So what is it? So I guess, those expeditions by default infer that you've obviously got a real passion for the natural world, outdoors, being outdoors, rather than, an indoor or office-based job or career. So I guess diving back, what was the initial draw, going back to when you decided, because the job you had in Malaysia was journalistic, wasn't it, initially? And
so I just sort of like old school reporting, like, TV reporting, basically. And that was great. And then we did this cycle ride back home because we decided we wanted to be closer to our folks. And then I ended up working as Red Bull's adventure editor, which was amazing.
Yeah.
I was stuck in a desk job, and it was sort of like, that itchy feeling of like, I just need to get out. I just need to get out. So that kind of took me more back to doing more freelance stuff and spending as much time outdoors as possible. Because have you heard that quote? Actually, a great interview, Sam. If you've not seen it, I'd highly recommend it. It's when David Attenborough interviews Obama. The other way around. Obama interviews Attenborough.
Okay.
And he says, so when did your passion for the natural world begin? And Attenborough just sort of says, well, when did yours stop? He's like, if you look at kids like Willow, she's out on the beach and she's picking up every stone, looking at every leaf, and it's like, whoa, this stuff's amazing.
Yeah.
And then we just connect somewhere along the way.
Yeah, but it's still there, isn't it? And I think that's one of the things that we find, we used to, we will start again now that COVID permits, but we used to run lots of forest bathing and in-person nature connection courses up in the South Downs. And a lot of that was corporate work. And Holly and I always used to laugh. And when everyone arrived, the shoulders were up by the ears, you could kind of see the tension in them. And then after just a couple of hours, a nice walk, a forest bathe, a nice picnic al fresco, a little fire, when they walked back out again, they were just different people. They were laughing, their body language was relaxed, and nothing had been done there. They didn't take any medicines or any herbs or have any talking therapies. It was just nature doing what nature does. And I think that's most people's intuitive response, isn't it? You get out into nature, you come back and you just feel, you just feel refreshed physically, mentally. And I just think it's something that people need to, like you say, it's not something you have to do. It's just something, it's there in us, isn't it? We just need to have that initial impetus to say, well, I'm just gonna engage.
Absolutely. And even like if you're just feeling a bit rubbish, like it's my kind of go-to. It's like, when you're just like, oh, I feel really crap, I don't want to go anywhere, I don't want to do anything, I'm like, force myself to walk, because I'm like guaranteed I will feel better, even if I don't want to get out the door. I do. And you're right, it's the best therapy. And is that where, I guess, for you, it's a career, being outdoors, expeditions, journalism, adventure, that I guess it's all wrapped up into one, which is, quite a unique place, I suppose, for a lot of people. But I know in the past we've spoken about your interest around holistic health and meditation and these kinds of things, and funneling it into more of a holistic side. Where does the, I guess, nature of the outdoors
fit in that context? Is it something that you will is it intuitive, or is it a proactive sense of, you know, I'm feeling really overworked, I'm really stressed, I have to get out? Or is it just something that you almost intuitively know you need? Is it a conscious decision?
Yeah, I think it's something intuitive, and I can always tell if I've been inside and there's definitely something about the outdoors that pulls me out there, because it just makes me feel so much better. And I think that's what I found, like, on this trip to the Essequibo. You know, I was outdoors for 3 months, and my hair was feral, and but I felt amazing, Sam. And I think physically being active the whole day, movement, like from the moment we woke up to the time we went to sleep, we were putting up hammocks, chopping wood, you know, like functional fitness. And I normally have like really bad shoulder back pain because I'm like hunched and doing Instagram or whatever. But I felt so good. And I reread my diary actually recently, and it was just saying, this is the best I've ever felt. Yeah. And that was in amongst like all the stress and hardship, in a sense of expedition life. And I think the biggest thing that I realized on that trip was I was experiencing stress in the way that we're meant to, I think. You know, I would hear a jaguar coming through our camp, and I would gear up for that, like, and I noticed when I came home, I was still getting that same stress response, but it was to WhatsApps or emails, or like the constant ping, 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 ping. And I'm like, wow, actually, I've now experienced where that state is really healthy and really good, because it will save you from being eaten by a jaguar, to like actually having it in my pocket. Yeah, and this is that disconnect, isn't it? Where, you know, that system, that's, you know, 800,000 years old, that fight or flight response. But our body and our mind and our nervous system almost hasn't evolved, you know, to deal with where we are now, because that fight or flight response is exactly that. It's designed to deal with that really acute stressor. That jaguar either attacks you, you attack it, or you run away. But either way, within half an hour, it's done and dusted, isn't it? Yeah, and your body... you could suddenly, it was weird. It was like this bizarre dichotomy of like having never felt more stressed in my life to suddenly feeling so relaxed. Yeah, but it's the opposite here, isn't it? Whereas your emails and commutes and traffic and mortgages, and there's no end point. The jaguar doesn't get to run away because it's always there. So this fight or flight is always activated, and we haven't got the physiology, we haven't got the chemistry to exist like this, which is why they're saying that, you know, 80% of all chronic illnesses have their foundation in this chronic stress response. But, you know, I think the antidote to that, if you look at all of the research around medicines, herbs, you know, talking therapies, all those things are good, but there's still nothing that is clinically proven to lower the stress response as quickly as contemplative or even active time spent in nature. And what I think so brilliant about that is it's free. You know, we don't, you know, or paid for interventions, brilliant, but just to go out for a walk in the woods and just sit down against a tree and just, you know, focusing on birdsong or whatever it may be, that's clinically proven now to reduce cortisol, to reduce stress, to reduce that kind of hyperactivation, you know, so effectively. And I think just if we can just get that message across, if you're feeling rubbish, just go for a walk, even if it's the last thing you feel like. If you do it, almost guarantee that you'll come back feeling better and calmer, because it's tapping into what our body knows. What that jaguar, you know, analogy, that's what we're designed for, isn't it? So that's bonkers though, Sam, that you're saying 80% of illness starts from stress. Yeah, so the most recent evidence is between 78 and 81% of all, you know, it's not saying that stress causes those, but it's saying that the foundation of how you go from being normal to you know, mutant to pre-malignant to malignant, fully cancerous, those mechanistic changes have so much of their foundation in the immune suppression and inflammation that stress causes, and same your heart disease and even things like Alzheimer's. So this is a real priority now for public health services around the world, is how do we get communities and, you know, and countries to exist in a lower state of chronic stress. And a lot, you know, most of this research has actually come from Japan. Because you know, their mental health profile is absolutely diabolical. You know, they have this incredible work ethic. And they had the first documented death from digital overload. A 21-year-old girl had a stroke after playing Grand Theft Auto for 51 hours. Wow. Yes, obviously she had a shower and she ate and went to the toilet and had a nap, but she was still doing it pretty much constantly. And she had a stroke and died. And that was the real catalyst in Japan for
what do we do? And that's where forest bathing as a technique came out of Japan, and it's just exploded, you know, from there into this health intervention. But it doesn't need to be, only humans can manualize going into the woods, you know.
Yeah, a horrible story about that woman, but it reminds me of, like, I was invited to Japan a couple of years ago to join up with a group called the Yamabushi. I don't know if you have heard much about them.
No.
They kind of use nature as a way of healing, and we're taken on this silent hike basically, and the idea is you climb 3 mountains representing your past, your present and your future.
Oh wow.
And the hike starts at water, and the idea being is you kind of visualize just putting all your problems in the water.
Okay.
And the only thing you can say on this entire hike, the master of the hike will sort of say, "Are you ready?" And you say in Japanese, "Yes, I accept." So whatever comes, you have to accept it. And it's a bit like they were saying, the nature analogy, whether it's raining or like too hot, you just have to accept it. And the idea is you spend a couple of days hiking over these 3 mountains,
Wow.
dealing with your past, dealing with your present, and then finally the end bit is you jump over a load of fire. So they light a fire and you run over it and you shout, and the idea is you're meant to be reborn. And it is amazing that I don't know whether it's just me, but like that pent up energy inside, just like raw, and it was so cathartic. Sam. I was like, we need to implement this in Wittering.
Yeah, we do. But that's the thing, is that, you know, all these cultures, including our own, we have these rites of ceremony, don't we? Have, you know, you have the vision quests, and you have these solitude missions, and we had this kind of transition from boy to men or girl to woman. But we, you know, and or most indigenous cultures still have that, and it's a seminal part of someone's life, isn't it? Whereas we've lost that transitional, that almost rite of passage. We don't get the thing of what you said there. You know, that's powerful on so many levels, isn't it? Mentally, emotionally, physically. That's such a powerful tool, and actually that's something that we're really doing a lot of work and research around at the moment, is the work around these indigenous cultures, because, you know, we spend quite a lot of time in southern Africa. We spend quite a lot of time working with healers and trackers on the South Africa-Mozambique border, which, you know, these amazing people. And one of the things I learned so much around, you know, animal tracking and, you know, interpreting nature and signs and herbal medicine. But the thing that hit me most of all, and even to this day, it kind of bowls me over, is, you know, there's so much work in the West, rightly so, about mindfulness, isn't there? About trying to focus on the here and now, and not, you know, getting too infatuated with next week, next month, next year. With, you know, and what struck me was that these indigenous cultures, their act is like this one fluid presentation of mindfulness. They're living in the moment constantly. Their rituals, their the way they live, their kind of the way they engage with the natural world just holds them in the here and now. You know, if you're tracking an animal, there's no room for what's going to happen this evening. It's what's going on right now. And that's, you know, one of the things that I've tried to really implement in the research we're doing is how does nature, how does being out in the natural world anchor us into this mindful state? And I'm assuming that, you know, with those 3 months and all the other experiences you've had with indigenous cultures, is that something that you've seen in your experience, where these people are living their life in a much more, I guess, intuitive, less materialistic, just freer and just a more intuitive place, I suppose? Is that, yes? So yeah,
it's an interesting question, because I think there's definitely sort of a romantic notion around it, but then there's also kind of the reality, which is things are a lot tougher in the sense of, you know, it's subsistence farming. It's kind of, you do what you can each day to survive. And it's fascinating, having spent some time, especially in South America, looking at sort of issues that indigenous people, especially in the Amazon, face. Connectivity in terms of so-called development is both good and bad, is what we've been told, in the sense that one lady said to me, you know, we've lost so much of our traditional heritage because kids these days, they want to get on the Wi-Fi and they want to go on Facebook and Instagram, and so there is a sense that even in sort of the most remote and isolated places in the world, like, you know, this expedition I did in Guyana, we had to charter a plane there. They get very relatively few tourists, yet people are more and more connected. And I think that brings with it like that weird tightrope to walk, as you say, between remaining connected to our truest sense of self, and that's rooted in nature, versus like this, which is amazing and has so many benefits, but kind of trying to find that balance that works for the kind of, I don't know, urban world.
Yeah, but that's the key point though, isn't it? It doesn't need to, it's one of the things we're trying to really iterate, is that it doesn't need to be, you know, 2 weeks or a week or a month. You know, we can, I think, trying to simplify nature, you know, just trying to snatch half an hour, you know, in a lunch break, sitting in a park, you know, that's still really good. It doesn't need to be climbing Mount Everest. It can be very baby steps, very simple. It's that accumulative gain, trying to snatch 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there as the days, weeks, months unfold. If you look at the research, that impact of that accumulative gain on our physiology, our mood, our biochemistry is profound. And I think that's a big thing. I think in our experience, that's quite a big barrier for people. They say, I haven't got the time to take a whole weekend off to go wild camping or a whole day to go paddleboarding. I said, well, yeah, but you probably could go paddleboarding for half an hour. Or you could go into the woods and light a little fire, or you know, take a gas stove and make a cup of tea and just chill out for half an hour. And it's breaking it down, isn't it, into a much more bite-sized, doable concept, rather than this big mission-based mindset of it's just too much, you know, too difficult. And I think, I guess that's something you've had to adapt to, is it, since you've come back, you know, into, I don't say normal, but you know, where you are now, I guess you've had to adapt how you get into nature, do you?
Yeah, definitely. And actually, Sam, you've been a huge inspiration recently, because I think it is often about appreciating the little things, isn't it? It's like looking at a leaf or a flower and kind of just, you know, spending time looking at it. And
yeah,
I've loved your little tips on, like, is it the marigolds or calendula?
Calendula, yeah.
Calendula. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they're in our front garden.
Oh, are they?
To go, oh gosh, you know, we could put them in a carrier oil and make X, Y, and Z. And
yeah,
it's just given me a whole new appreciation of, rather than, you know, going off to the Amazon or whatever, it's like, actually, what is in my back garden? You go foraging and find some mint and make your mint tea. And it is, it's like literally what is on our doorstep, whether it's seaweed or, like, you know, flowers.
Yeah. Yeah, but actually, I just want to go back a little step. Just one last question, which I think which is just playing in my mind. You said about those 3 months you spent on that expedition, where essentially you were wild, and it was wild. Anyone watching this, you want to see how wild it is, check out the blog you've got that link on your website, haven't you, to the daily, or you know, the whole series. And it is wild, and it's pretty much as wild as I think you can get in terms of the environment you were in. But when I was looking at that and hearing you speak about it a minute ago, this idea of this Paleolithic genome, I think we're going to see a lot of this in both the medical literature and also the lay literature, the lay magazines. We're going to see a lot about this in the coming years, because it's opening all kinds of doors and answering all kinds of questions that we couldn't answer. This idea that, you know, the evidence is really clear around the healing benefits of nature, but what we're not sure is why does going out in the woods, why does doing this, that, and the other have this profound impact? And what this Paleolithic genome research is unlocking is that, in the same way that 150,000 years ago, when we lit a fire, that fire meant protection from animals. It meant the ability to keep an area lit through the night. It meant the ability to cook food. Over the last 150,000 years, that's evolved, so that now when we light a fire, those genes are activated. And what happens? It makes us feel relaxed. It makes us feel safe. It makes us feel calm. And I think most people will intuitively know that. You go outside or someone's got a fire pit, it galvanizes a group, doesn't it? People congregate around it. You know, everyone knows that relaxing impact of fire, and that plays out in everything. We recognize a bird song or an alarm song, or we recognize calendula or whatever it is. That's just an activation of these 150,000 genes, 150,000-year-old genes we all carry. But what struck me was that if you were living in that quite primal state for 3 months, it's an accumulative gain. And if you go out for an hour in the woods, those genes activate. You spend 3 months in that kind of environment. To all extents and purposes, the way your body, and even to a degree of parts of your brain, were working, it would have almost been Paleolithic in terms of the cues and the chemistry and the messages. And did that, I know you said when you came back, it was quite a contrast. When you were actually there, did you feel different in your body? Did you feel stronger or weaker or more energized or more fatigued? I know you were doing a lot, so it's a bit of a biased question, but did you feel differently? Did you feel a different response to that wildness?
Oh my God, definitely. And it went through a few phases. So like when we first sort of started sleeping in our hammocks in the jungle, I was terrified, Sam. You know, you're lying there, you hear a howler monkey, and you're like, what is it? I'm about to be eaten. And then slowly your kind of confidence builds and you learn how to handle yourself. And I think it was from like knowing that you can survive in your environment. And yeah, I think there was a real genuine change. And I remember like I was so excited about getting back to a bed. And then I got in the bed and I'm like, do you know what? I really miss the hammock. And
Oh, wow.
It really hit me that we came up to like a guest house. Like, so the journey was really multifaceted. We started at the source of this river, the Essequibo, and we paddled all the way to the Atlantic Ocean. And on the way, we saw that slow change of the river. And, you know, we gradually encountered gold mining and people and humans. So we saw that kind of transition from nature to urban. And I remember we'd been looking forward to this guest house for ages because we were like, we can get some crisps and we can get like beer and woo. And we got there and I was so overwhelmed. I was overwhelmed by music, people, and I just had to take myself off. You know, there was a party going on. There'd been a rodeo in the village, and it was, you know, normally like thumping trance music, and I'd be like, woo, yeah. But I was like, what is this? Like, and it was funny that I found that the noises of the jungle, which initially I'd found so terrifying, were like way more comforting. And yeah, it massively changed me. And equally in the sense of, you realize what it means to be human in the most primal sense, because again, I'm quite a feminist, and I'll make sure Charlie like doesn't sort of stereotype me as like that's a woman's role or that's a man's role. And but yet in the jungle, I found I was gravitating to more traditionally female roles, so less physical in a sense because of my physiology, I guess. And that was really interesting to me because and like you say, being around a fire, I felt safer. I felt safer as part of the group. And it kind of gave me a deeper insight into like, but maybe more traditional ways of living.
I think that transition. I think it's really powerful because we do quite a lot of bike packing. When we'll load the bike up, we'll go up into the downs, we'll wild camp for the night, and it's, you know, it's some of the highlights of my month. I look forward, almost crave that I know, you know, 24 hours I'm just away from everything, everyone. There's no internet. I love it. But when you first start doing that, I'm by no means saying you need to do that to get these benefits, but you know, the first couple of times, you're on high alert, aren't you? There's a cracking twig or there's a rustling, and you feel completely alienated and out of your comfort zone. But after just a couple of times doing that, suddenly those noises, they just go by completely unheard or unacknowledged, and those background noises become normal, and suddenly you feel really at one with the world around you. And that, I think, is such a turning point, because suddenly, rather than it being us or me and nature, it's just all one. And that's where you start to get that really powerful change where you begin to see yourself as nature, and that changes our behavior. Suddenly we don't just try and reduce waste or reduce plastic because we know we should. We do it because we want to, because we see ourselves as part of nature. I think that's almost the mindset we need to cultivate. I think if we're going to really make inroads into the environmental challenges we're facing, I know that's a big digression and another issue, but I do think that we can all cultivate a much deeper sense of our connection with the natural world just through 10-15 minutes a day. Even just, one of the things we're talking about next week actually in the free challenge is all the science around bird song. Because again, but there's all this evolutionary work around you. When the singing birds are happy birds. Happy birds mean no threat. So as an evolutionary trigger, when we hear singing birds, we associate that subconsciously in the brain level as safety, abundance. We can relax fully because there's no predators. So sitting out in the garden with a cup of tea in the morning, listening to birds sing, it sounds really, I guess, clinically weak, but you dig a bit deeper and it's suddenly a profoundly powerful tool for deactivating stress and increasing dopamine, and the evidence is there. And that's what I love. It's about breaking it down into these bite-sized pieces, isn't it?
Oh, Sam, it's so funny you say that, because it reminds me, I sat on a log. One of our guys is a guy called Nigel, and we went foraging for some plums in the forest, and it was just the two of us, and I was a bit scared to leave like the safety of the group.
Yeah.
I was like, Nigel, what if we get eaten by a jaguar? And he was like, just relax. He was like, listen to the birds. He was like, the birds will tell you when you hear like a massive like rah, 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 like he's like, something is wrong. If they're not doing that, don't worry about it. And so you're right. I think if the birds are singing and not like in distress,
no,
happy days.
Yeah, and the same the trackers in Africa we work with, that the birds were the key to unlocking the whole environment. You know, everything about where they were going, where the game animals were, where the predators were. It was all about the animals, because they all follow the impala or the antelope, and how it all changes. You understand the birds, you understand the natural world, and we can apply that. That's a simple thing you can do. If you're in the garden, you've got everyone around here is, in Britain has got blackbirds. As soon as a blackbird hears a cat, the blackbird goes crazy, and suddenly you're in the house and you hear the blackbird crowing crazy. If you look into the garden, you're probably going to see a cat in the next 5 or 10 seconds. And it sounds silly, it's almost completely pointless, but at the same time it's not. It just connects us that little bit more, and if you get a couple of things connecting us, then it amounts up to a big change and a very, very powerful health intervention. So I think it's just these little snippets, isn't it? We need to
absolutely. And it comes down, I see you do a lot of work around connection, but I think it's like connecting to yourself, to other people, and to the natural world. And I think that's ultimately what makes us feel happy, and so many of us lack certain elements of that in our lives, and no wonder there's a mental health crisis in some ways.
There is a mental health crisis, and I think it's costly for the people, it's costly for families, it's costly for NHS, and the evidence from Japan and South Korea around what nature connection does, there's clinical trials that have compared nature connection with antidepressants, things like sertraline, and almost consistently, every clinical trial has showed that spending time in a forest or a purely natural environment outperforms, in terms of assessments, the benefits people get from antidepressants. And that's not to say antidepressants are bad. Antidepressants are brilliant. They save lives. But why, there's that capacity to say, well, let's just give this 3 or 4 weeks. Can we see if that evidence that's clinically trialed, can that play out for you or me, or, my father, whoever? Can we try and get these bigger gains through just using this available resource? And I think that is the win for everyone. And then if it doesn't work, by all means go on to antidepressants. There's nothing wrong with that. But I just think there's this untapped ability to really unleash the natural world in just everyone, not in people who are necessarily interested in it or passionate about it, but just in everyone, just trying to get as many people connected or reconnected with the world and the natural world in a way that's achievable and doable on a regular basis, rather than 2 weeks a year in a camping trip or whatever it is. And also that, I guess, how old is Willow now?
She's going to be 17 months in 2 days.
Oh wow, God, that's gone quite quick. I guess that was I saw you last with her before COVID, so that's obviously eaten that time up. But I guess is it something that, just lastly before we finish up, I'll let you go. But so those of you who don't know, Willow is Pip's daughter, 17 months old. Is immersing her, connecting her, embedding her in your experiences in the natural world, nature, expeditions, adventures, is that something that you think is really important? That giving
massively.
Her that
I mean, she's called Willow for a start.
Yeah, I was going to say straight off the bat. Yeah.
No, but what I found really interesting recently, Sam, and you probably do this with your kids as well, is just like kind of let them roam.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because I let her do the exploring and I follow around after, and I feel like I'm learning so much from her, because I'm rediscovering, just like the rocks on the beach. I'm like, oh my God, these pebbles are beautiful. Yeah. And at first she sat down and would play with them for hours. And I'm like, oh gosh, not again. And now I'm like, cool, we've got a couple of hours just to stare at pebbles and just go with it. And that's what I love, to be honest. It's like introducing her to the great outdoors in a way that she kind of wants to explore.
Yeah. And did she have a great time in the camper van? Was she?
Oh my gosh, she loved it. She was like waving at everybody and like pushing around the campsite. It was a fun way to do it.
Yeah.
And she had somewhere to sleep, which was also key.
Yeah, that's nice and dry, not a tent, which is also quite helpful, isn't it? Like, we've had some tent nightmares with the kids when they were younger. So a camper van's a good kind of halfway house, isn't it?
Yeah. But so I got a question for you just before you go. But like, what kind of got you into all of this? Like, what?
Yeah, I mean, I've always had it's always intrigued me. I've always been outdoorsy. I've always camped and was an army cadet and, you know, sailed and biked, this, that, and the other. And it wasn't really until spending time in Africa that it really, I guess, joined up an interest or a passion with science and almost a profession in the clinical side. And it went from being an interest to something that we explored, to something we started researching. And in the last 5 years, it's become a bit of an obsession, really, I suppose, because I just think, I genuinely feel it is that missing piece. I genuinely feel that if you look at what the research is showing, we're getting our diets right, we're moving more, we're sleeping better, but we're still not achieving the level of health and wellness that we should be. And if you start digging down, what that research is showing is that it's increasingly because we're not connecting. And so for me, it's been quite a transitionary journey from just an interest, just being an outdoorsy boy, you know, as a teenager, into something that's really just captivated me and now intrigues me. And now it's become, like I say, a bit of an obsession. But I just, like you said, I just never regret any exposure with that. Doesn't matter what it is. Even if it's just mowing the lawn, it doesn't matter. It could be a 2-day bikepacking trip, or a week, or the Alps, or, you know, walking on it. I just feel so much. I just as collectively better as a result. And I just want everyone. If I could have, you know, a 10-minute slot on the 6 o'clock news or breakfast. That's eldest child.
Hello.
He should be in bed, but he'll be in bed in a minute. It'll just be to try and get this message of it's so profound, and it's discernible. You will experience a benefit. You will feel better through doing this, and just try it. Just pick a technique, sit in the woods, or listen to birdsong, or light a fire and meditate into it, or whatever it is. And just, if we could just create a bit of a shift in the same way that 10 years ago, meditation was, you know, it was something that was done in the East, and you had to wear an orange robe, and it was mystical and esoteric. Whereas now it's, you know, every corporation's doing it. And I think we need to create the same progression and embeddedness for nature connection that we've seen for mindfulness. It needs to be something that's dragged from the outside into the inside, and something that becomes integral, whether you're in a city, whether you're in Northumberland, whether you're in Sussex, wherever you are. Even if you're in a flat, a high-rise flat, you can grow plants, you can stare out the window, you can go to a park. There's not, you know, there's no one that's excluded from this. And I just think we just want to try and really move mountains around getting people to connect, which is one of the reasons we've created this free challenge on Sunday, because it's just this brilliant framework for, you know, how do we use fire for meditation? How do we connect to birdsong? What is earthing? So, if you're listening to this and you're looking to try and bring this into your world, then do check out that free challenge. Head over to the website, mindbodymedical.co.uk, and you can register for free. Kick off this Sunday. I'll let you go, Pip. I'm sure you've got better things to do than waffle on to me.
Oh, no, Sarah, it's so good. I would definitely be signing up for that. And also, if you ever want to come mow a lawn.
I'll mow your lawn. I'll do it. Well, it's so lovely to talk to you, Pip, and lovely to see you. Give my best to Charlie. I hope he's well.
Wicked.
And I look forward to seeing you soon in person, hopefully again. And thanks so much. I'm really grateful that you've joined us this evening. And see you soon.
No worries. Thank you for having me along.
And take care, Pip. See you soon.
Cool. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.